Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Kulturfolger. We had a longer break for those who were yesterday. Some new faces here, for some here, and I would like to welcome you to this is our new cyclus. As you know, we are dealing with the topic. So as you already know, the whole year is dedicated to the topic of luxury, and we try to provoke it with different aspects. We try to provoke it with different indexes. We have different chapters that we try to give focus on it, and then the new chapter that we are dealing now, that we give focus to luxury, it's Matter-Fashion-Transcendency. In a way, it deals with materialization of it, with fashion as a possible luxury, with transcendence to certain concepts that we try to see. In a way, what would luxury be in the sense of responsibility, what we talked already before. And in that case, we will, the whole chapter will be dedicated inviting different artists, different artworks that communicate this triad in a way that doesn't put it in a certain dialogue, but rather a negotiation between the concepts. So I'm very happy to say hello here to Silvio, the artist that we worked already before, a dear friend of mine as well, that I like very much, and I regard him as a perfect speaker and a perfect person that would kind of start or introduce this chapter to us. So I'll speak just a few words about him, and he will then follow you or guide you to his artistic process and the process of his work. So Silvio, he's from Croatia. He studied, he graduated at Academy of Arts in Zagreb and the Faculty of Textile Technology in Zagreb. And in a way, so there's like my understanding of his work. He's interested in this appropriation or like a deep understanding in art history and research of ways and materials or recipes that are hidden in this sediments of history, and then extracts them and puts them out in a certain different way. So these are processes of crystallization, of corrosion, of flora, of different viruses that kind of overcome, intermingle in his artistic practice, both and in his fashion practice as a fashion designer. So this also kind of puts a certain question on what is nature and what is natural, what we are also interested in space here, and also provokes certain topics such as like a desire or a certain need that is not spoken, or in a way puts aspect on certain hybrid concepts that are not so like normative in a way. So I would say that the work is very conceptual. It's very much based on understanding of art history, on understanding of archiving, understanding of the media and different techniques that are basically put in a contemporary way and trying to actually communicate in contemporary topics. So Silvio presented his work in numerous independent and group exhibitions in Croatia and abroad, such as International Triennial of New Media Art in Beijing, Device Art, Inner Colors in Munich, the Essl Museum of Contemporary Art in Zagreb, Touch Me Festival, Essl Museum, Biennial of Emerging Artists. Also, he was part of our exhibition in Basel, Uncommon Bloom, last year that we organized together with the Villa Renata. And now I will leave the space and place to Silvio, who's going to guide you through his process. Thank you.
I will try to kind of maybe chronologically go through my work. Maybe that's the best thing, so kind of see where it emerges and how it develops over the years. So I have selected some files, and maybe there is too much, so stop me if it's boring. Also, I come from the fashion environment. I used to study fashion design and textile design, and this is something which I always kind of I never wanted to go leave as a media, but I was also very interested in art history, so I studied at the Academy of Fine Arts, and basically I studied printmaking and then developed the printmaking into more conceptual works and installation pieces. So there is this early focus in my work, which is kind of how to combine fashion and graphical media. And this is probably one of my earliest works. I think it's from the year 2000. And so I actually had this was my first solo exhibition, which was a parallel on 2 locations. So what I did is actually I was then well known as a Croatian emerging fashion designer who won some international awards, so I was kind of well established in the media. But what I did is I exhibited sort of like a collection, which was not a collection, in a almost like this underground gallery. And what I did is I had some these pieces, and they were actually placed under a deep press, and the color was put on the garments, and this is what was exhibited on one place. But what happened on the other one, I actually extracted the prints of the garments. So what I did is I kind of treated the garments themselves.
Oh, ich schaue den Match. Nein. Ich habe gemeint, ihr seid eine Ausstellung.
Zijn we een gesprek voor een verschluss? Nee, was een
Nein, ist gut.
So what I did as an experiment is I actually got rid of the mattress itself, like a plate, a printing plate, and kind of said that the garment itself is a plate, and after I rolled it in color, I extracted the prints of the garments. So what I had is I had a situation where you have the print where you see the color blocking here, and then on the other location you actually see what I extracted with the paper from that piece. So I have an unstable matrix, and I have like two locations for the exhibition, and kind of leaves people confused. Also I kind of called the whole exhibition prints, and this was quite interesting for me, this technique of kind of taking off the print of something. So it kind of you have it also in history, like mostly like the very famous Turin, the Turin canvas, where you have the Christ wrapped in, and then the print is extracted from his body. And this is kind of the reference which I wanted to achieve, where you have actually the print extracted from the garment itself. But because of this very big press, you can kind of extract all the layers, and you kind of get this X-ray feeling from the print itself. And these are the close-ups. So after that, I was developing this paper prints, printing a lot, and then I started developing my first kind of experimental pieces, which were pieces I made myself in a way that I have sewn and I have fused together. I have fused textiles with papers, which I would color, and then I would get them installed with this water circulation through them. And what would happen during hours and days, they would completely change the color. They would, the water would take out the pigment from the garments, and they would sediment inside of these kind of little aquariums on the floor, and the garments themselves would kind of become more and more white. So this process was very interesting to me, and I kind of started developing more and more pieces that were in a way processual in a gallery space, and involved in basically paper and water, and this was my first commission for the Museum of Contemporary Art, and it was actually commissioned by Roxana Markoci from the MoMA Museum. She came to visit me in Zagreb, and then she kind of discussed what I could do next, and they commissioned this performance, which was a big stage set in November outside, and the whole event was announced in a media way that it was like a fashion show, which it was, but it was actually not. And what you had a water curtain and like this ibex floor, and people came out wearing this, again, paper that I colored and used before inside of my works. And they would just stand or walk around this curtain, water curtain wall, and they would kind of defile to a very kind of happy music in a way, like United Colors of band of happy music. And then it would not only would it would tear apart, no, the garments would kind of fall off, pieces would stay on the floor, and also it would stain their bodies. So each time they would change or another exit, you could kind of see the residue of the garment they wore before. And eventually what you get at the end of the performance is this kind of, let's say, like drip painting on the wall and with the residues. So it was a kind of one of my kind of biggest works in this time. I think it was the year 2002. And it was also quite heavy for the audience, because when you invite people who are from the fashion environment, they kind of expect something to be very fashion related and more like pleasing in a way, and what you kind of serve them is this very kind of dehumanizing concept, which kind of let's say they are not prepared to see maybe. These are some of the images. So you have like this 100% cellulose paper, and also kind of flooded with pigment, and these are the images. Let's say, so after kind of staging a fake, let's say, fashion show in a way, fake in a way that I kind of target or started to target with a different audience, so not invite like maybe art environment or art audience, but a fashion audience. I kind of started to talk to one gallery and developed my first fake shop. And as like a known fashion designer, I said, okay, let's develop this concept with also like Elle magazine and other fashion magazines, and let's like advertise my first shop. And what I did is, what we did with the media is we said that the gallery is closing, and that that I have it now for my shop, and that everybody's invited, blah blah blah. And we have a fake domain and everything, and I built a store inside of the kind of this very unattractive but very popular Zagreb gallery. And I made the whole facade, and only the curator could kind of use this little door to get to his office. But the rest you could kind of not perceive. So what you see from inside is this total kind of new package inside of this slum neighborhood. And what you have inside is actually nothing. You have like a paper environment everything is made from wood and paper, and you have all the cloth that is kind of chained to the hangers. You cannot steal it, you can touch it, but maybe you're gonna maybe get this what do you say, when you put rust in the tetanus. So you are kind of inside of this space where you are being monitored by cameras, and nobody works here. No, you can talk to anybody. Nobody can serve you, and everything is kind of tied to the hangers. And you have different reactions from people. People sometimes tear the clothing. Sometimes they take the water out and try to flood the space, and different kinds of reactions emerge here. So the shop, the fake shop itself, like the whole installation, also starts to fall apart in a couple of weeks, and then we kind of just close it, and again it was a gallery. So it was what I did is I designed the pieces myself in a way that I fused together different layers of paper, different layers of cotton and paper or non-woven fabrics. Some of the pieces were perforated with pins and flooded with water, so you have this process where they change. When the exhibition starts, everything is very white. When it ends, the walls come down and the garments are kind of rusty in a way. And you just have everything that's kind of in a store, but treated differently. What's interesting with the pieces is that when they dry, you can kind of activate them again. But during the years, the rust eats the garment in a way that it destroys the canvas and paper and everything. So they get very dry, and this is the process which I really liked, because I kind of was obsessed with this idea that the art itself should not be very stable and should not be kind of designed in a way that it should be long, in a way that it should kind of deteriorate. Private public street piece was my next commission. It's a piece which I wore when I was really young. Later, other people wore it. So it was a kind of auto performance in a way, but later it was you have actors who can wear it. So what you have a suit, you wear it inside of the gallery space, you put a coin inside, for instance. If it's like €1 coin, it would lower 1 centimeter of my pants. If it's like more euro, more centimeters go down. After the pants go down completely, you kind of have the motor bring them up again, and you have the whole cycle again. So what you do, you mingle inside of the space in an area like 30 meters around the device, and people who actually put the money in maybe don't even see the performance themselves, but other people see that something's wrong and your pants are falling down, and you get to stand in leather tongue inside of the space. So it's kind of my first work for the device art festival, which on every festival they kind of tend to commission a work for me, and it was kind of auto-ironic in a way to strip. Under the year 2004, it was done a couple of times and restored, and then at the end it was sold to one private collection. But it's kind of a work that emerged. Zagreb Queer Festival asked me if I could kind of make something they would finance on the topic of heteronormativity of the childhood. And that's how this work kind of appeared. What I was interested in is actually when you take the early Renaissance painting, you always have the flower, the daisy flower, which is kind of the symbol of youth and innocence and virginity. And you mostly have like young women holding this flower. But then you kind of have the duality inside of this painting, because you mostly have the fly somewhere in the area around it. So there is this dual idea that somebody is portrayed as a virgin, but actually it's not, because the whole thing is corrupted, because the flies the first animal to come to see that something is rotten. But then you also have the English saying to be under the daisies is to be dead. And the daisy itself is mostly today symbolizes not only the daisy chain and the virginity of children, but also the very effeminate homosexual male. No? So you have the slang in English like "don't be a daisy" or "if he's such a daisy." So kind of the work takes all this information and actually uses it to kind of communicate, if you can understand some of these terms. But what you have a lawn that's kind of hanging upside down, so it gets water from up and the light from down. And it's kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted to do a certain kind of unstable, or let's say upside down situation, which is not in a way acceptable and not natural, if you can kind of think about this, but it's also sustainable in a way that if you take something which is so kind of precious and so radical and upside down, but kind of also give it in a way, and if you nurture it, you know, it will grow. So this is kind of the work, and it actually what I did, I sowed. I haven't planted the daisies myself, but they were grown from the seeds, so they take a long time to kind of grow and then establish themselves on this piece. To see the work, you have to lie on the floor, basically, which is kind of also an interesting position because it puts you kind of under, so you're kind of in this grave situation. This is the first work later I had developed with the irrigation system and different kind of light, but basically this is the first one in 2004. Perfume was my next work, which was kind of also. I had a shop, I had a fashion shop, so I said, like, what's kind of the next problem? The next problem is a perfume, because you have this market of perfumes, and perfumes always are like this very interesting things, especially to me. I love perfumes, but then I wanted to make a perfume that is actually just the perfume, just the smell of your own body fluids. So what I did is I made a small lab, and it was my kind of, I would install myself inside of the gallery, I would have a bar, and I would get people to come to the gallery and give me something there. So you could not bring something of your own, so you kind of give me urine, whatever, blood, menstrual blood, tears, whatever you want to give me inside of the gallery. And then we kind of make we sign a contract where I kind of say that I will make 2 bottles of a perfume, and you will get 1 for yourself, and 1 will stay in my collection, and other people can also use it, and it would have your name and everything what you gave me. And then I would, use different kind of processes to get the smell of the odor which I liked or I wanted. So I would target it with, I don't know, extractions like microfiltrations. I would distol it, whatever it takes to get out, because every excrement has a different kind of process. And then we would bottle it, microfiltrate it, and then bottle it, so it will be very stable. And what you actually have, you have like a wall with a database of all the people who were there, who gave something, and people actually smelled it. And this is kind of the lab I kind of installed in other group shows or somewhere. Whenever I would come somewhere, I would kind of establish it, make a mailing list, people would kind of come, we would make a contract, and basically my collection of these bottles would grow and grow and grow. It was what people said, you're making an anti-perfume, and I was not pleased with it, because it's not an anti-perfume, it's actually the perfume. But it also triggers problems in society, like with filth, shame, shame of our own Loire Chemois ourselves. We are kind of thought that and kind of brought up in a way that we have to present that we do not have a liquid now. So we're in the social way we are very pure and virginal. So this is something that's the word that kind of brings out this taboo of outer smell. This is 14 years. So the process is very interesting, also grows for other people. But it's interesting, when I did the first time I did this work, the gallery got a complaint from the city that it's producing unmoral art and letters like this, and like a lot of media was around this work. So it was not such a long time ago, but it struck a lot of people. There's a place around the corner where that translate. It basically does not fit into this maybe concept, but I decided to show you this work because later I will show you what I did with this work in the future shows. This was my what I did. I just sewn 2 shirts and folded them like you would in the store, and I put them in blocks of paraffin. Candles, and they would just stand inside of the gallery space. So it depends on the light and the temperature. They would kind of change also the shape in a way. They would kind of have their own way. But it was I think it was the year 2006. It was the first time I did something related to my early prints, where you could see all the layers from the garment that were printed. So it was kind of more like an object test. This I will skip now. Decided to skip and go to this one. Crystallization was kind of a process which I always loved. It's something like children do in elementary school from chemistry. So I started with salt, later developed other crystals from other minerals. This is 2007, and I started to do different processes with crystallization in a way that I would try to kind of grow these perfect little cubes. I would try to play with the idea that they change the inside, so you get a little cube inside. So I would kind of change this oversaturated liquid to get these traces and to try to intervene into the cube. This was made on the titanium fiber, so it's super fine. But then later, what I was interested in, I was starting to be interested in rust, which would always kind of break this cube, not have it so perfect. And I started with a lot of experiments with crystallizations of fibers and fabrics and pins and garments. And decided to make a space, a small space, and objects with this process. So I would just, I think I bought 3 tons of salt and crystallized everything that's kind of possible to crystallize. I would put this textile nets all over these blocks, and then later I would crystallize the blocks themselves and later build spaces from this. So I'd get these crystal chambers which would have 2 different layers, but what you had the inside of the piece itself, which was crystallized, but you could never get inside. So it's kind of, the crystals kind of face the crystals, and it's kind of auto-reflective in a way from inside, but you are not invited. So I kind of have these installations inside of the dark space. But you also have these distorted crystals because they grow on metal iron oxide. They kind of grow next to the iron oxide, so they are very distorted. They're not so perfect. Also, I will extend this story to the garments, small and big ones, which would also deteriorate in a way. what I liked about the crystal, and it would be something that I always thought of, and it was a sort of a virus, because it's very visually attractive, reflective also, and it kind of brings joy when you see it, but then on the other hand, it kind of destroys the material it grows on. So whether it's like the fabric itself or the metal, in a way, you have this duality of an object, which I really like. So pleasing and reflective, and then in a way, you know, it just destroys the surface. So I kind of said, okay, for crystal, for me, is a sort of like a virus in a way. And I kind of started to use this. This would be like this would be some of my experiments, how to grow it on different kind of materials and structures, and these were objects which were placed inside of these dark spaces, and this is how the pieces will be exhibited. This is the year now. This is the year 2007, and I went back to the graphic prints, but in this time it was a screen print. And what I would do, I took this rough from early 17th century painting from one German artist, and I screen printed the rough itself onto the cotton polyester elastan fabric. But then after screen printing it onto the fabric, I would burn the celluloses from the fabric. So what I would get the print itself just standing on the grid of polyester and elastan. So what I get is this almost like a painting print, which is very stable at one point and very big and monumental, but then after I take the celluloses out, chemically, I burn it out, I get this very unstable print, which is very fragile, in a way that you can destroy it with like a finger. And I will show you the process. And this kind of burnout technique was kind of interesting for me, because what I started reading about this being used in Renaissance Japan and China, where they would kind of take proteins out of the silk fibers, certain proteins, so they could achieve different structures and also different drapings on the clothing. So I kind of thought, okay, we could kind of use this recipe onto the cotton and also kind of develop this drama. So you have the pieces that are kind of, you see there, they have fragments how it was before, but also pieces which are very burned themselves. This is the process. Actually, you have the canvas itself, the fabric, you have a print of the white on white, which you actually don't see. Then you apply the chemical and you burn out only celluloses, but not burning other fibers. And then after you burn the celluloses out, you wash the piece and you kind of get, you also see it different, and you kind of get just the print staying on the filament of elastan and polyester. And all the pixels are kind of somewhere in the air.
Is it, quick question, technical thing. Is the ink that's on there, is that what protects the cellulose?
Yes, the ink is actually protects the cellulose fiber and kind of it stabilizes it, so it doesn't burn on the spot where the ink is, but it burns on all the other spots. So you get like this like a crust staying on this ink fibers. You can't have it without the gradient of polyester, because the yarns, the elastan yarns are so fragile that if you don't have it stitched with polyester, it just falls apart. So it kind of gives it this static moment. So this is kind of close. So later I developed these in smaller, bigger works or space works, but it's kind of something that's kind of this inner drama is very interesting to me, and this is something I would always kind of apply if I was thinking about fashion or costume design or something. So it's kind of this unstable but also invisible media inside of this textile fabric becomes like the one that carries the whole image on top. But it's also this idea that you have a ruff, which is kind of this very precious garment, which was very expensive. It's like the biggest form of luxury kind of you had in the like Renaissance or even later Baroque clothing, which is very complex to make. You maybe had one or maybe two during your whole lifestyle if you were noble. And then it's also kind of my reference to something which is really hard to do. It has this lace quality, but it's also technologically very hard and very stressful to do. So what I like is this kind of moment where these two things start to communicate, but the space between is like 500 years. This kind of the space of organic and mineral dyes were always interesting for me, and kind of I studied a lot of from the text when I studied the textile. I would read a lot about textile dyes and how to achieve different dyes, especially in medieval times or ancient Rome. But then you have also the mineral dyes, which are very interesting because they would be very toxic and would also be just used in a painting and are never put on the skin. So what I started to do, I started to do studies of organic dyes, and I started to reconstruct all the recipes which I would find. And I would use basically all the plants and animals which I could find on the market to achieve certain dyes based on the recipes, and I would also use like all the recipes in a way that I would use urine to make indigo and processes like this. And started to kind of achieve this, make my own color scales, and later I would start working on one of my biggest works in a way of complexity-wise. It would be alchemic poetic, where I would take the Van Eyck's Ghent altarpiece and I would make analysis of every character on the piece and what it had on, what it was painted on, and I would find recipes how this color was achieved at the time when Van Eyck would paint these people and give them these body attributes. So I would make my notes and reconstruct the recipes, and then I chose like a very basic media, like a t-shirt, and just try to reconstruct this color. This color was very hard to reconstruct, but also it was very sensitive to detergents, to space, to air, to our water, because it's the atmosphere is much different than it was before. So I started using silicone. It was a special silicone that would always protect the color and kind of keep the vividness it had the first day. So I would kind of say, okay, each character would have a certain t-shirt, and I would reconstruct the whole color palette by just having this one dot placed on. And what I actually did is I would take these t-shirts, I would prepare the petri dish with a certain extracts from tannin, from oak or whatever, and then I would incubate this color inside, which I extracted, and then leave it to dry, and this is how it was actually done, and then siliconized on the top. So I have one t-shirt for each character inside of the painting. Some have 2 or 3 colors, so I have 2 or 3 dots, depends. All are except one is animal extract, the other are plants extracts, from lilies or different kinds of oak or madder, so the whole palette of organic materials. And this was the final installation where you have the piece itself in a way, the Ghent outer piece, which I kind of made double, so I get this position to stand in the space. And I have there is nothing in the upper part, because everything fell down, and the line, the hanger itself, it's actually the horizon in the space, in the painting itself, where the godly creatures are divided from the earthly creatures, and the light is the holy ghost. And so all of these things are strategically put inside of the piece, and each kind of t-shirt is a reference to a certain player inside of this game. And you also have my book, which with all the recipes and all the references. So this is the basic, this is the final piece. Mineral, I kind of never work with mineral pigments and textile because it's kind of very, it's almost impossible to connect them together, to fix them onto the textile, and they can be quite toxic for the skin. So this was my first kind of object sculpture, which had this problem inside. I would it had a pool, and I would put different kinds of pigments inside. This was graffiti or different kind of pigments I would buy from one company that makes pigments for restoration department of Loire, and these were very kind of fine pigments. And then the pump itself would drain the pigment and with the water and flood this piece of clothing. Which basically it's a very thin paper which is fused onto cotton. And this piece kind of takes 2 weeks to sediment. So it starts very white and kind of gets grayish and grayish. At the end, unfortunately, was the photo. When you open the piece itself, you kind of get this drip painting with these sedimentations of mineral pigment onto the piece. But it's also kind of it's impossible to fix it. So it's kind of more like the piece that talks about this impossibility. It's the cloud. It's my work from 2010. It's a small device placed onto the wall. The whole room is covered with how do you say this on German? Vanquish pigment, the blackest of the black. And you have the piece that emits white, very fine dust, and it is the white pigment made from oyster shell. It's a Kyoto oyster shell that's used for makeup in the pottery and theater, and it's the lightest of the white pigments. So when you emit it into the air, it stays in the air for a long time. And then it sediments on everything inside of the gallery space, leaving this very fine coating. So it's, I would program the machine to emit this kind of small boom, and then it would just depend. Actually, the piece depends on the gallery. So if the gallery has a very invasive ventilation system, it sucks out the cloud, or it takes it somewhere to somebody's office. Depends. Or sometimes the air is very still, so it kind of gets floating between 2 layers of air and stays for hours. So it's very unpredictable. But you kind of have to use a lot of this pigment. It also leaves a mark on the wall. So you kind of see the different possibilities of this. Every time I would install it in some other gallery, each time it would be something different. Sometimes they would not be happy because they have a very aggressive ventilation system, and then it would just suck out the cloud. Curtain is the work from the same series. It's a 45-minute performance installation, where you have the curtain made from polyvinyl alcohol. It stands in the gallery, and at one point it gets to be flooded by water really slowly. So the material itself disappears in a way that there is no or there is a really small amount of residue. It's odorless, it's without smell, it's without any toxicity, but the piece kind of disappears in 45 minutes, just leaving these filaments that would hold it. And it's usually in this exhibition which I did in Munich, it would also reveal the other work in a way, what was behind the curtain. The cloud was behind the curtain. So it depends on the fastness of the water, it disappeared. People can get to be a little bit scared from this work because they always think I work a lot with chemicals, so they always think, okay, he's flooding something with a chemical and just take one step back. But what's interesting is that it's just like water, which dissolves the alcohol itself, and it disappeared. This is the residues that stay, and then people mostly ask for them or steal them. And then this is a former Italian pavilion in Zagreb. It's part of the student center now, and it's now transformed into the theater. So what they had this atrium, and when I was younger, I used to come there to have a coffee, and I remember there was a fountain. There was always this old fountain, but now the fountain was gone. So I asked them if I would be able to make work from this situation. Can they give me the permission to dig out the fountain and restore it in a way? Because I had this concept that I want to have a print of the fountain. I wanted to have it like printed out in a way I would print it out and then buried again. So they said yes. So we dug out the fountain, and the fountain was really in a bad condition, you see, and then it also didn't give me an opportunity to kind of do what I wanted. So I restored the plumbing, and I elevated it into the air and covered it with a big piece of fabric. It was like a 12 meter big piece. And I left it for 2 weeks to just use the water and just do what it does. And the piece, again, oxidated, no? The iron oxide would kind of print the garment out, the fountain. So this was the kind of almost like a week or 2 weeks period. And you had the whole kind of sedimentation again, the process. And then it was just exhibited in a way that it was opened and dried. So you had the print of the fountain. No? So it was kind of, again, I started to communicate with my older works where I would print out the garment or print out the fountain. And I kind of called this a print. So everybody was not happy with this idea that it's a print, but I actually called it a print, and it's like almost like a classical print of something in a way you would again print out the Jesus from the Turin canvas. But what I actually wanted to do is open up this story about Caput Mortuum. Caput Mortuum was a very interesting pigment for me, no? And the history of Caput Mortuum was more interesting in a way that it's used by pre-Raphaelite painters, and they would grind out the old Egyptian mummies to achieve this special brown. But then again, Caput Mortuum chemically would be the end of the end of the end. So this is when you try to make an experiment which lasts for 100 years or more and keep the fire alive and let it consume whatever you want. After you after this experiment ends, what stays inside of the vessel is the Caput Mortuum. So it's like nothing, and it's even less than nothing. So this was kind of this concept I wanted to embed inside of this piece, that you just take something, print, dig it out, take the print off, take the print and dig it in again. So, but also chemically, Caput Mortuum is also something we would use today for this kind of a color you could achieve with iron oxide. Cochineal is something which I kind of fell in love with. The little bug that eats the cactus, mates on it. And I would just start making a lot of experiments with cochineal and kind of started to think about my auto-portrait through this color. My mother's last name is Roșu, which means red. And I always kind of thought that if I would portrait myself, I would portrait myself through this red, and also through this red, like cochineal red. It has an interesting history with being made in ancient American cultures, Indian cultures, no? And brought to Spain, and then again being canonized as the color of cardinal and pope, and then later being thrown away because it was starting to be symbolized with prostitution and a revolutionary color, and then again became like a communist color. So it has a really different history, and also you have a Satan. No? Let's not forget about Satan. So you have all of this different concept, the color changes, and I chose it to be like my color. And I started to make a lot of experiments how to extract different kinds of red from this insect. So I had scaled this from very orange ones to very purple ones. I would play with pH levels and different kinds of extraction by just extracting the gland or extracting the whole bug with the whole body. And I started kind of to be good at this, handle the process. And so this was kind of my first color palette, what I can do with the same bug and how I can make the different reds. And of course I chose the right one for myself, the cardinal one. But also use the other. So I made different variations of these works. Some of them were just by piercing the animal itself onto the canvas in a way that it explodes, and then just placing like thousands and thousands of these bugs onto the canvas, where I would have these huge kind of compositions in a way, and then each body would explode in a process differently and leave this little like a flower bud. So again, the work would kind of be very, very attractive, but then you would kind of emerge and see that it almost looks like somebody's, made a huge massacre onto the canvas. This was a preparation for the curtain which I made. The curtain would be the biggest work in this series. It's a curtain, the cotton curtain, which has the whole irrigation system which floods the curtain with the extraction of the bug color, the cochineal. And it becomes more and more red in time. So this was installed in Museum of Contemporary Art. And you have red emerging from the pumps every 4 minutes, and this curtain gets more and more and more red. And also develops smell, which is this kind of intense candy smell. And I did not want to put antioxidants inside or something that would stop this process. So I would get, the museum would get a lot of complaints, and it would get sanitary police every day. And you had the cartridge with the bugs and everything was kind of, and the whole experiments were on the wall. And that was my auto-portrait behind the curtain, which is actually my body. These are patterns of my body. If you could sew them together, you would get me in 2012. So I had transformed my kind of skin into the pattern, and I made it from damask, which I colored in cardinal red and also siliconized, so to have it quite to be here for a long period. This would be this transformation of the curtain. And you would also, because I did not use any antioxidants, neither I did not sterilize the color, you would have the whole color palette through the weeks. This is the mess. and this is my self-portrait, which was kind of the red, or the most red of the red I could achieve at that moment. And then we would again put silicone on every pattern to kind of have this the most intense red I wanted. This is but it's also interesting for me because what I did is I did not claim this as to be one work, but 3, 4, 7, 3, 6, oh, it's 6 works. So you could kind of also buy like the left arm or left leg in a way that market-wise it would be, you can buy the whole piece, but also you can buy just one piece. Like you always have a saint, which is kind of put to pieces and then sent through the whole world. So somebody has a finger or somebody has the head. So it was. And then after some time, I would use, again, return to the pigment, my problem with the mineral pigment and organic dye, in a way that these two do not function, and they have like this very problematic place in art history, in a way that good painters knew that you have to use mineral pigments to make a good painting, and then amateurs would use organic dyes, and then these paintings would fade, and then the society would mock them. So we have museums, big museums filled with paintings which you cannot display because they have plant dyes inside of them, and then these are very unstable and they just fall apart. So you have like a Virgin Mary which is now purple, or it changed during even the painter's life. So this is something that the history of painting tends to kind of eliminate these people out of the game, saying that they were amateurs, they didn't know chemistry, or did not have money to afford mineral pigments. So what I did, I made a small experiment. This was never actually this was never a finished piece, but it was just like a test. It was my test for the garden. I would use different white flowers, which I would place on the table, and have them in little jars, drinking mineral pigments. So I would use all possible white flowers I could get, tulips, lilies, and whatever I found that it was quite absorptive in a way that I could really see it. So what they do, they drink different pigments, and I look what happens to them. Some of them die directly after a couple of hours or a day. Some of them completely change the color. Some of them really die immediately. This one drank iron oxide. This one drank something red, obviously, so you can see this transformation of the flower, but also you have this virus inside, because mineral pigment is not supposed to be inside of the flower. And also it shouldn't be inside of the human being because it's very toxic. And at the end, I would take all these flowers and I would dry them and make a new kind of a pigment. I would kind of get what I did. At the end, I would extract the whole piece together and achieve like a lilium iron 2 sulfate pigment. So I would get like this stable unstable piece, which would be interesting to do something with and leave it to the history to analyze this and see what happens with this. But it would kind of open up a new field for me. But what I did, I just left it at this point. But you get the interesting colors and you also get kind of unstable, stable pieces, which emerge from the one body. Hortensia was very interesting for me because of its toxicity. And this is when I started developing my own screen printing pastes. I would just collect a lot of flowers and dry or fresh, and I would extract out what I wanted to extract with the help of my pharmaceutical friends. And we would make, for instance, in this work, Hortensia, we extract the glycosides out, which become very toxic if you, for instance, use them with something more acid. So I would screen print the flower, which is gone, I don't know, the slide is gone, okay. Imagine that this is print. And you have it in a gallery space, and you have this notification that if you pour the white wine over the print, you have cyanide emitting out of the print. So I would play with this toxicity problem inside of the gallery space. Usually would have Americans really reacting bad in a way that they would leave the space. I had the first presentation in my studio, and people left the space because of this. They were really frightened that it's not such a huge level of toxicity. It can't harm you. Maybe it could if I wanted to make it higher, but it's not. But also there is this moment of fear, and I started to develop this kind of my own tastes, and again have this moment of kind of duality where you have the flower on the wall and you say, oh, such a beautiful flower, and I want this next to my bed, and then you see it's very toxic. And this was in Uncommon Blue by Kulturfolger. It's part of my exhibition called Everything I Like is Immoral, Illegal, or Does Not Yet Exist. It's my, let's say, autopsy of Hieronymus Bosch painting, the Garden of Earthly Delights, the triptych. So I had 26 works which I extracted from my problem with the painting and my kind of communication with the painting. And this is just one of these. This is actually a ladder. The ladder, which is interesting for me, is a piece that takes you somewhere, up or down, or nowhere, on a journey or on a mission. And you have it you have the piece where is the piece? You have vessels, the borosilicat vessels filled with extracts from different toxic plants or non-toxic plants, but all the liquids inside of these vessels are very problematic in a way that if they're put on the body or consumed. So I cannot take this idea of this is the garden, and I place them inside of this borosilicat vessel, inside of the double layer. So you have one, if you break outer layer, you also kind of have the protective inside layer. It's a theme of from the whole exhibition where I kind of take all the elements which I find interesting inside of the Bosch painting and do something different with it. So you have the Arbutus unedo. The Arbutus unedo plant is the plant that is kind of mostly occupies the middle painting. And I have the plant inside of the gallery, and again you can eat the plant. The plant is very interesting, and the fruit is very interesting. But also, what's interesting behind the fruit is not only that it's it's a toxic in a way that if you eat a lot of it, you get like diuretic problems. So this is kind of my first idea was, okay, this is why everybody inside of the right panel of the Bosch's painting, everybody kind of has diarrhea, and there's like a sewer, and everybody shits inside. And it's kind of my twist of course, that this is hell because everybody in the garden ate too much fruit. So this is kind of the main, and this is the entrance to the exhibition, and you enter the smaller Arbutus unedo, and it has a small reconstruction of the scene from the Bosch's painting, where you have the flowers put inside of the anus, and a lot of these things which are just the same, but today in different media. You see them later. Fermentations is one of the works also. Fermentation is actually the jars, the vessels holding different objects, plants, animals, different things I found in the painting. And I will just extract all the objects and pieces I found in the painting, find them on the market, and put them in the side of the fermentation process. Also, some objects would be scaled and from the painting. This is from hell, knives, cards, and I would put them inside of the carpets, so they would be on the floor, like a wool carpets. It is cloth inside of the ship and the S key and the gambling square. So what I would do, I would simulate different areas of the painting inside of the gallery. These are pieces, these are fermentations, which you can eat also in the gallery. Some are edible, so you can somebody could open this for you and you could try. So you have people eating cards also, or cucumbers fermented with tennis shoes, and I would have this very weird assemblage of inside of one jar, and they would boil in time. Really, the eggs would really kind of be the most problematic. Everything what I found in the painting, I put together in a kind of different relationship. You know, the Arbutus Soneto plant with the notes, which kind of have somebody singing these notes inside of the hail and peppers, and you had clams, and there's a lot of these. Crystallizations, again, as it was always, and I think it will be always kind of my field of occupation, which kind of I developed this and this fits together in a way that I said that there are two fountains in the painting, and I wanted to do a stable and unstable fountain. So I have an unstable fountain. This is very dangerous work. It's a 96% alcohol. It's very flammable, and it can blow up at any time, even if some spark comes next to it. But it holds my version of Hieronymus Bosch's unstable fountain, which floods the fountain itself with the extract of myrtille fruit. And it's a very smelly and very pleasing work, but it's also very dangerous work. So I had this fountain kind of reconstructed through my drawings and my visions, or through the grown borosilicate glass and kind of works. And then I have, so this is the unstable one. And then you have the stable one, which kind of grows, stands on the most stable media, and that's a crystal, which I grow, and it floods the crystal itself and grows it by just flooding it constantly. And it's very toxic, but it's there. All the colors, all the dyes, all the pieces for the exhibition, all the media, everything I extracted myself in the studio from different fruit I found inside of the painting. So I would kind of classify all the sorts inside of the painting, find the fruit and extract the color and the taste from the fruit. And sometimes pick my fruit myself. I would get these all different kinds of extracts. And I would either paint with them or use them inside of my fountains or crystallize them, and then I would also put them inside of the gelatine, and people could eat them on the exhibition. I would make chromatographic drawings based on the fruit that I extracted. These are very unstable works which last only for like a month or two, then they disappear. And then you had like also the possibility to eat the work. You had like these molds in the shape of laboratory vessels filled with these extracts, and then you could come and eat it on the exhibition to taste the fruit. I did one again analysis of the painting, and I found that there are two things that are interesting to me, and it's one is the fruit, and one is the things that are made by men. So when I kind of selected all the pieces from the painting, I found that all the pieces that are made by men are in hell. Never in heaven and never in the garden. Everything is in hell. And then we took out all the pieces from the hell and made like this intaglio prints from them. But also I found all the fruit in the painting, and all the fruit was everywhere, but not in hell. There was never fruit in hell. So I made two kind of triptychs based here on this wash. One was the fruit influence, what is the fruit and where is the fruit, and the other one is things made by men. And I would kind of have them on the tables, and mostly I will not see the whole piece, but everything is on the right side. And then I would scale some of the pieces and make carpets. Carpets are very unpopular and kind of kitsch form, which I kind of like in a way that it's, you're not supposed to make carpets or tapestries. It's very unpopular. And I would just scale a lot of these things through prints, intaglio prints, hand colored prints, portrait myself as a man tree, and portrait people with flowers inside of their heads. And the whole, this is kind of the sublimation of the whole exhibition. It's just one piece of shit with our monetary. Una is our monitor, it's our monetary system, and fruit. So it was like the main piece of the exhibition. It's like a small intaglio with silicone. These are the details from the garden which I lost before. This is the lost hortensia flower. I had a problem with the computer, so they just pop out. This is the lost hortensia. And I showed you some of the works before just so I can show you this. Because this is the exhibition I did 1 year ago. I had a commission for one gallery in Zagreb, which is kind of huge. And when you get commission for it, people usually tend to make big pieces, big works to kind of fill the space. But I had kind of a problem with this idea inside of my country, because it's always like big, but there is never like funding for this big. So it's always like a kind of this problem with production. And what I said, what I can do, people are always kind of, when I exhibit in Zagreb, my audience always knows that they will get something big and spectacular, and it's always kind of complex. And then I said, like, let's do something else. I want to do everything I already did again in the same way, based on the same techniques, the completely same technique, but I want to do it small. So I want to have all of the works that we will kind of put inside of the media that I will exhibit, but I want to have them small. So I made everything again. Like small, Silvio, like very small, like 25 parts smaller. So it was again very hard to do because it's almost impossible to cut these small pieces. But we scaled everything, and it took me quite a long time to kind of see how I'm going to do this. And I had to dissect my own works in a way to kind of get them from the archive, measure them, see how I did these things, and then again 5 years later do them again in the same process. And I had everything: the ruff, the shirts, the store, and everything inside of the store, and the small dead friends. So I had this kind of, for me it was quite interesting because it's very traumatic to kind of dissect your works in a way to kind of repeat them again, and then you have this problem with the production. When something is so small, it's really harder to produce. And but at the end it was interesting because I had this reaction from the people that were completely disappointed in a way that used to get something so small. And you have such a huge space with like nothing almost. It's very filigree. And this is flower works. It's one of my, it's a work from last year. I did from one library in Zagreb. It's actually Zagreb library. It's 53 libraries that are funded by the government. So it's almost like a national library, but it's just for the main city. And they commissioned the work for me because they had this topic of homophobia inside of their spaces. So what they have, they get fundings for LGBT literature, but the people who are employed refuse to have them and to serve them, and so they do not have this. So the curator that has a gallery inside of these spaces asked me, can I do a work that would be kind of readable in a way that people could kind of think about this problem? And what I did is that I made these flowers. I would dry flowers. I would take establish my own herbariums, and we would just make these round compositions and get them laminated inside of the glasses. And the gallery is called the Windows Gallery because everything is always happening inside of the windows. So I said, I will get your windows out and we will install my windows. And my windows will have these compositions of flowers laminated inside, which we will do in the factory. And then we changed their windows and we inserted mine. And mine were really this kind of divine images of, like daisy chains and rosebuds, and people could just change the windows where people were reading. And it was kind of attractive, especially to people who come there who are kind of older people. But then at the end they would get these texts which would say different possibilities what these flowers are. In a way, what I did with Under the Daisies, where you had the daisy as like this very feminine flower, virginal flower. Now you also have the daisy portrait as like a homosexual. You also have a daisy portrait as a virgin, like these virginal flowers. But then you also have the rosebud as something that is like a famous Fabergé egg, which is called the rosebud. But you also have the rosebud as the anus after fisting. So you have all the possible definitions what this composition could mean, and it's written under the window. So when you come closer to kind of see all the nice details of these flowers and what they are, you actually can read all the possibilities, which I took from the gay dictionary, slang, from Wikipedia, everything, and you kind of have this different approach to the work, something that was really kind of just pretty now becomes quite maybe insulting. And I wasn't just happy with this, so what I did is I said, okay, I will have this will end, this exhibition will end, the windows will be removed, they will be returned to me, they will have the proper glasses. I just have one more work which is kind of has the longer span, and it's also this work is quite heavy to have it conservative because of the UV ray lights. It gets it fades in time. So it's very kind of massive. It's inside of the glass. You kind of think it's protected, but in a way it bleaches, it changes. But I wanted then to make another one. So what I did, I made like 2,000 bookmarks with flowers, which were inserted in a lot of books inside of their libraries. And each one would also kind of carry one possible definition. So you would kind of open and it says like this is a daisy and it's a very effeminate homosexual. Or in the other one it would say the daisy is like a virginal flowers of beautiful young children, blah blah blah. So what you have is like you have this very fragile piece, which is kind of more stable than the window piece in a way that it kind of stays hidden inside of the book. It communicates longer. It can, communicate after hundreds of years if you kind of don't get it out. And you also have this moment when somebody takes the book takes it home, finds this, and then they return usually to the gallery and say, okay, what is this? Should I return it? Is it something? Or should I keep it? So I kind of left the gallery, but then left this work to kind of have this longer life. This is it for now.